morning, everyone, and welcome to the Sons of Sequoia podcast, broadcasting live from Wheat Ridge, Colorado, the home of the champions. And we're continuing on our theme this week. We found a theme, we've happened upon it. Our theme is independent creators on YouTube that are doing valuable journalism or investigations. And I believe today we're discussing the guy that I would consider to be the face of that. And his name is Andrew Callaghan, and his channel is called Channel 5. Now, on Monday, we discussed CoffeeZilla. And CoffeeZilla is looking into a lot of scams in the crypto space, and he calls himself the Internet Detective. But CoffeeZilla's format is really someone who goes out and does his own research and then presents it to you from more or less behind the desk, sort of like we do. Now, the interesting thing about Channel 5 is that he does man-on-the-street type journalism, where he goes into these places, into the firestorm, and he gets this information. And I think that sort of leads to a different level of understanding and awareness about issues. So today we will be talking about Channel 5, and more specifically his most recent video, the Q conference video. But before we get started, I'd like to ask you, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fine. It's a beautiful day here in Colorado, and I'm looking forward to talking about the Channel 5 with Andrew Callaghan, because he has a different kind of journalism. He doesn't really say much. Mm-hmm. He lets them talk, but he does edit it to where you can have all different view of what's happening. And I think it's a very interesting type of journalism. And we may be talking about that today.
Yes. Now, I would also like to point out, I'm going to show this, that Channel 5 with Andrew Callaghan is the new channel's name. And we can go, I'll just show it real quick. As you can see, Channel 5 with Andrew Callaghan has 818,000 subscribers on the strength of 7 videos. And you may say, that's a lot. But that's because he was coming from a channel called All Gas, No Brakes, which I believe that he also was the brainchild of. And if you look at some of these videos, he just started posting 1 year, but they're all putting up 2.5 million, 2.9 million, 4.7 million, 4.8 million. Millions and millions of views for each of his videos. Now, I think he ran into some issues because he accepted some funding to help him produce the All Gas, No Brakes, and then he didn't have rights to it. So he sort of separated himself from All Gas, No Brakes. He started Channel 5 with Andrew Callaghan, and he's making similar content or on the Channel 5 channel that he was on All Gas, No Brakes. But it's important to say he didn't just come out of nowhere. He's been doing this for almost 2 years now, and he's putting up some serious numbers with his videos. Mm-hmm. And I think the reason why he puts up numbers is because they're well done, and they strike a chord, and he's sort of investigating parts of the internet, but also parts of real life that actually exist.
Yeah,
Sorry about that.
When he moved from All Gas, No Brakes to Channel 5 and to create his own, he brought most, if not all, of the team with him that generated this. And so he made, he talked about the contracts, but hey, that's history. Mm-hmm. He's moving forward, and he has a journalism approach that I think is very different. And I think that he is gaining traction. Because it's very, very interesting, especially the episode or the video we're going to be looking at today, the Q conference. And you hear about what's QAnon, and you'll hear people talk about it. But he goes to the people and hear them talk. Now, when you hear the people talk, you can form your own opinion. But on the other side, sometimes you don't get a lot of the backstory, where they come from. What's the implications? And so you may not get the full picture, but you certainly get a realistic picture of a point in time of who they are.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So
go ahead.
So I think that quite often is missing in reporting, in news reporting and journalism. So they'll talk about something. He says, "Oh, okay. I wonder what it was like if I was there." Well, he takes you there. Mm-hmm. And you know what it's like when you're there. And so I think this is a different type of journalism. I don't know. I'm not in journalism, but I just get a feeling it's a very different type of journalism. And I think that that compared with other types of approaches is valuable, and this may be well suited for YouTube.
Yes, I think that this is kind of the future of. One reason we chose both CoffeeZilla and Andrew Callaghan, Channel 5 with Andrew Callaghan, that's the name of the channel, is because I don't believe that they're supported by any large corporate interest. There are individuals out there sort of putting these stories out into the world, and a lot of times it's people's first contact with these stories or first real sort of examination of the fact that he paid the entrance fee to go to the Q conference, and he sat there and he talked with these people and he listened to what they had to say, and then he brought that to his viewers. At the end of the 20-minute video, it's 19 minutes and 49 seconds, you have a different perspective on this movement, this conspiracy theory, than you would if you just listened to an anchor in a stuffed suit, talking head like you and I, telling you what to think about QAnon. And I think it's remarkable just sort of the perspective you can gain from listening to people tell their stories.
Well, and like you mentioned before, David, it's kind of what we do here on the Sons of Sequoia podcast. It's just listen, talk, but listen to what the other person and try to understand what they're saying. You don't have to agree with it, but try to understand what they mean, what they're saying, so that you can have a better understanding of what you think.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what Andrew Callaghan does in the Channel 5 with Andrew Callaghan.
Yes.
He listens to the other people, listens to their side, whatever it is.
And he doesn't judge. He allows them to speak it. Now, you and I, the viewer, can listen to some of these QAnon folks and say, wow, their reality is a little out of whack. It's their version of reality is different than my version of reality. Like, I think that's safe to say for some of these people. Would you not agree?
Yeah, definitely.
But the reason why they're so comfortable telling Andrew Callaghan about their reality is because he's not judging them. He's not trying to argue with them. He's not trying to say, but don't you realize that if there were a global cabal of Satanist, child abusers, that you wouldn't be the one that had to fight against it? There would be stronger forces than this pitiful conference. He's not asking those questions. He's letting them tell their story so that we, the viewer, can hear their story. And I think if you start arguing and you start sort of getting down to brass tacks and sort of attacking the logic of some of these QAnon adherents, you immediately get them to clam up.
Well, you and I have talked about this. When you start challenging them, you're kind of feeding into why they are dissidents in the first place. And I think one thing that I know I took away, and maybe you did too, from this particular one on QAnon, is that they feed on controversy. They're encouraged with controversy, and sometimes I get the feeling like it's not that they don't believe what they say; they don't even know what they're saying, but they're saying it because they get a response.
Mm-hmm.
They get a rise out of people. They get attention. And so, all right, I'm going to carry this line as far as I can because look at all the attention I have a microphone in my face, and so yeah, I'm going to talk about it. And sometimes, if you listen carefully, they'll contradict themselves. They don't care.
Yeah.
That's not the point. The point is not that. The point is, am I getting attention?
Yes.
And so so you wouldn't get that unless you actually heard them talk and go on and on and on, like Andrew Callaghan. No judgment. Just go ahead. What do you think?
Mm-hmm.
And we've seen other videos where the people would ask him, and ask Andrew, what do you think? What do you think? He just smiles and holds the microphone in front of their face.
He's fantastic at not engaging when it's not the appropriate time to engage.
And then they continue on with their line. So you hear what they actually think.
Mm-hmm. Now, I think that we discussed this last night. We can get into the video a little bit. I don't want to play the video. I would encourage people to go to Channel 5 with Andrew Callaghan site on YouTube and check out, you can see it here, and check out the video yourself because, we'll spoil it more or less, but the editing, the pacing, the way that he puts it all together, I think it's definitely worthy of a watch, so I would encourage you all to watch it. Now, I just want to start real quick, and I'll just turn off the sound, with this lady. Now, in all the media I've seen about QAnon, it's about how they're out of whack, they're crazy, and they're a problem. They're a problem because they believe something that's not true and it's causing them to take action. But this lady, Judy, mother, I think this was the first time that I saw someone speak, and I had a fair amount of pity for the person. And I think it's interesting that Andrew Callaghan starts with her story because you feel sad for her. She's sort of locked up in this conspiracy theory, and she says she's lost her family, she's lost her friends, and instead of asking her like, well, why do you believe this? Don't you think that it's preposterous to believe in this conspiracy theory? He says, who did you lose? And she says, oh, I lost, family and friends. Like, well, who do you miss most of the people that you've lost? And she says she misses her little sister because they used to get together and they'd have coffee or they'd have wine, and now she won't even talk to me anymore. And that's sad. It's sad. So you see that this stuff, it has an effect on the people that believe it too. And instead of being angry at the people that believe this stuff, you're able to summon some pity for them, And I don't think that other journalistic outlets are doing that.
He, instead of reporting a story, I think he actually tells a story, but he tells their story from them. It's interesting, and also listening to Judy as she talks. I say, how did she get there? How did she do that? How did she get to where she was? And then what does she actually believe?
Yeah.
And then the rest of it continued on.
And then we start.
We
start to meet our cast of characters, and he conducted so many interviews, but you get an interesting breadth of characters. We get this guy, Muscle Bound Guy, and he's got the Muscle Something podcast. I don't really want to sort of promote his podcast on ours, but he's got a podcast, and he talks about QAnon issues. He was the one that said, I don't think Hitler was all that bad. So he went there right away. It's like, oh my God. Okay. Let's see, who are some of the other people? We have a Beard Guy, and all of these people are extraordinarily proud. And then we have former YouTuber Red Pill. I don't want to even say his name. Why bother to say his name and amplify his signal? And that's an interesting criticism. Do you think by sort of these people that are micro-influencers in the QAnon space, by Andrew Callaghan, who has a relatively large YouTube channel, going out there, allowing them to talk, and then making a video where they get 1 million views, do you think he's amplifying their signal?
I think there's criticism on that. There's criticism to Andrew that he is giving them a voice.
Mm-hmm.
And but the voice he's given them is going to be there anyway. And so, but he's letting them tell their story so people can judge on their own basis. So yes. there are criticisms along those lines, David. Yes.
Okay. Now, I would also say, and I was going to say something, but really it's sort of where you stand initially becomes what you think they're doing. Like if you're a adherent to this guy's content, I guess he was a YouTuber that had 300,000 subscribers. He pushed these conspiracy theories, and YouTube killed his channel. And a lot of these people had the same thing. I've lost 3 Facebooks, I lost my Twitter, I lost this. Why? Because I was pushing misinformation or, according to them, information that they don't want you to hear. But I wonder, where was I going with this? I had something.
Well, one thing that I'm thinking of is that they kept talking about I was censored. They wouldn't let me. They pulled my Facebook. They pulled my Twitter. They pulled my Instagram. They pulled my YouTube. They pulled all this stuff because that they're censoring me. Censoring says the people shouldn't be censored. And then they had a news channel guy come.
Yeah, from the Daily Beast, a journalist near the end.
And he wanted to report on them. And they wouldn't let him. They ran him off the property.
Yeah, so I guess they sort of censored him.
They censored him.
So they understand when someone says something you don't want to hear, you might be politely asked to leave or not so politely asked to leave. And that's what's happening to these people on social media, and that's what they're doing to reporters that come to their conference. And I guess I remember what my point was. Where you stand initially sort of makes you feel like I ascribe good motives to Andrew Callaghan. He wants to just show you this world. And he did. I mean, I saw more of this world than I ever have in this video. But because I'm skeptical of the conspiracy theory, I mean, and by skeptical, I mean extraordinarily skeptical. There's very little you could say to make me have any sympathy for adherence to this conspiracy theory. I think what he's doing is using this microphone as a shovel. He's given these people a shovel and he's allowing them to dig their own grave with it. Now, if you were an adherent to this conspiracy theory, you may say he's shedding light on the truth. He's going to this conference and he's letting these people speak their truth, and it is a truth according to them and according to me, and good for him for being one of the few people to go there and ask questions. Like, look at this lady, this older lady. She was willing to give up her family. Like, if it wasn't so important, why would she do that? You know? And she says, once you know the truth, you can't turn back. And the sad thing is that her version of the truth is my version. When I see her version of the truth, I look at it as nonsense, and she's throwing her life away for nonsense. But in her eyes, she's doing something magnificent.
But in journalism, they've taken down some of his YouTube channels, but then they reinstate it. But the point is, they're saying he's spreading misinformation, just like you're saying, but he's allowing the people to spread it. So he's not spreading it. He's allowing them to talk. And so a question arises, what is journalism again? Let's go back to journalism. Mm-hmm. No, I think that's wrong, so I'm not going to report it. I think that's right, so I'm going to report it. But then he's not saying it's right or wrong. He's saying this is what they're saying. And so do you report what other people are saying? Or do you make a judgment of whether it's right or not to report it? I don't know. It was what Andrew does and what I hear on the news. So there's some differences there that I find fascinating. And I think Andrew's doing a really good job revealing things from these people that we don't hear. Mm-hmm. And these people are real. And they're not just a few people. There's quite a few of these people out around across the nation. Yeah. And some of them are in Congress.
It's true.
I mean, some of them are leading our country. And so should we know how they think, whether it's right or wrong? Yeah, because some of them are making laws up there in Congress in Washington.
Mm-hmm. I mean, like you said, there's a lot of people. Now, I think the movement is dying. But I would say if it's 1% of Americans, it's still 3 million people. If it's 0.1% of Americans, it's still 300,000 people. If it's 0.01% of Americans, it's still 30,000 people. It's still enough to fill a good-sized baseball stadium. And
it's enough to storm the Capitol on January 6th.
Yeah, it's true. So I will point out, and I think that this is an important thing to point out, he is very good at interviewing, but this guy, I don't have his name, and I don't really care to even say their names.
That's right.
But he wrote a book on woke culture. Woke culture, of course, the culture wars that have become sort of a conservative focal point after the loss of Trump in the 2020 election. They focused on these culture wars. Like the Dr. Seuss Foundation said, you know, Dr. Seuss wrote some books that had some harmful stereotypes. Now, at the time, they weren't as harmful, but judging through today's lens, they seem to be insensitive. Like that level of insensitivity was more permissible back in the day. Nowadays, we don't feel it's as permissible. We're going to stop publishing those books. Well, you know, the talking point is they're canceling Dr. Seuss. But really, the decision was made by Dr. Seuss's own publishing company to stop publishing those books. But this guy starts talking about Mr. Potato Head, said they're no longer going to be calling him Mr. He's going to be gender fluid. You can make him a Mr. or a Mrs. Potato Head with the add-ons. That became the biggest issue in the world. Then, of course, Aunt Jemima. So this guy starts talking about cancel culture and woke culture. And he starts talking about all these things. And for one of the few times you can see Andrew Callaghan almost break. So I won't play the sound. You can watch the video with sound yourself, but we'll just see it on screen here. There he is. If you're not watching, he's realizing that this guy is talking about Aunt Jemima, Mr. Potato Head, and Dr. Seuss, and he almost laughs.
He cringes,
And
he hides his face.
he hides his face from the interviewee because the guy was sort of speaking about Aunt Jemima and Mr. Potato Head in sort of masked terms, and then Andrew Callaghan realized what he was talking about, and he thought it was funny. And so he hides his face so the interviewee doesn't see that he sort of finds it amusing. And I think that's to his credit. You know, if this guy feels like he's being laughed at, he might stop being as open with his candor. You know, he might not share his true thoughts, if you know what I mean.
But Andrew didn't challenge him. He let him speak his piece.
Mm-hmm.
Let him tell his story. Let him tell him, because he's there to find out what these people are saying, what they're talking about.
Yeah.
And what they mean, and try to understand them. You don't have to agree with them, but understand what they're saying to know how to deal with them and how to formulate your own either knowledge or how to respond.
Mm-hmm.
How can you respond to people if you don't know how they think?
Yeah.
You know, how can you really know how to deal with an issue if you don't understand the issue? How can you deal with a group of people if you don't understand the group of people?
Yes. Now, I think that leads into an important discussion. What do you understand about this movement from Andrew Callaghan's video that you didn't understand before?
But that's a good point, because I've been listening to it and tuning in over the last year. That's a good question. You put me on the spot there, David. I have to think about everything that he went through. Actually, maybe at the very beginning with the lady.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, you said you called her an old lady, but to me, she's not that old. This nice lady, how much they abandoned their family for this. I didn't realize. And there's a young person. There she is. Yeah. This pretty lady. And she abandoned her family. I guess I didn't realize that there's so many people that did that.
Mm-hmm.
That's one thing I didn't realize, how if you're going to start separating families, if all your loved ones that you grew up with and everybody disagrees with you on these issues, then if everybody's wrong but you, maybe you need to take a look at yourself, and maybe you're the one that's wrong.
Yeah.
And but maybe that's one thing I learned
Now,
that I didn't know before.
I think, you know, that's a separate conversation of, like, if someone in your family is an adherent to this and you feel like they're throwing away their lives for a lie, what's the best way to go about trying to deprogram them? I mean, it makes you think about that. Now, I'll tell you what I took from it. This lady, of course, this is a perspective I didn't have. There's people that are pitiable, that have sort of lost relationships with their family and friends because they chose this. And I feel like, and this is, maybe I'm just sort of cribbing from the words of the journalist who gets kicked out. What's his name? This guy. And he's a Daily Beast journalist. Will Sommer. He's been covering the movement. And but this guy, I'm showing him on screen, and he does say, you know, a lot of these people, they're just people that have been hoodwinked. Now, the organizers of the events that charge $3,000 to get into these conferences, they're just in it for the profit. They see a group of people that believe something so fervently that if you organize a conference, there's a profit motive in there. Now, but some of these other people, they're just caught up in it, and really, they are pitiable. You should feel sad for him because, and then this is this guy's perspective, and so I'm sort of cribbing from his perspective because he's the legitimate journalist that gets chased off, and maybe I'm more likely to believe him than these QAnon journalists. But he says, you're told that there's this grave evil in the world, and the only people that can stop it are Donald Trump and you. And then the way that you stop it is by getting online and boosting the signal of this movement. And you say, well, if that's all I have to do to make a difference in the world, like, you find some sense of importance. And then you sort of think about that in context with all of these people that he interviewed. Muscle bound guy, beard guy, so all of these people. And I think a lot of their focus on, I've had my Facebook taken down, I've had my Twitter taken down, is they were getting a lot of positive feedback, like you said, a lot of attention from posting this, and they wanted to feel like they were making a difference in the world. And I think that in their workaday lives, they weren't getting that sort of engagement on social media. But when they sort of start pushing this conspiracy theory, they are getting that traction. They are getting that engagement. They're seeing their numbers grow in terms of subscribers and followers. And it's a rush. It's like a drug. So some of these lower level people, I do feel like there's a feedback loop in there. And a lot of it is a sense of belonging, like with any other sort of cult-like following. But another is, in their lives, they were never recognized for anything. And by sort of being an adherent and a follower of this conspiracy theory, they're finally being recognized as someone of importance, someone that has something to say. Someone, when they speak, people listen, and that's empowering. And it's a shame that they have to use conspiracy theory to sort of achieve that goal, but that's what they're doing, at least from my perspective.
I think all of those things are true, David, and I think you're absolutely right. And I agree with you. I think you can identify different types of people. One is people that have a need to belong. They belong to something. The other is they have a need to be recognized, and they want to say things that are ridiculous, that they will be recognized. The other people have a need for power. They want to have power over people. And so once they have people coming to them, they have power. They're power hungry. And this is a way to do it. And other people have a monetary. They want to make money off of these people. And I think there's all different kind of people going on here. And I think one person said that it's really true. I think everyone agrees with this. One reason why all of this is amplified is because of the internet.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not like the internet is bad. It's that how is the internet being used? And it's revealing needs within our society, within our global society. It's revealing needs that we have socially, how we need to connect with each other. We can't disconnect. We need to connect with each other, because if we're disconnected, then we'll have to find the need to connect. And that need to connect sometimes are some ridiculous kinds of issues that are harmful.
Mm-hmm. So I guess, yeah, I mean, I think you're right. If you can bring, 1,000 people, how many people do you think were at the conference? 300?
That sounds about right.
Okay. So 300 people, let's say, and the conference was $3,000. That's nearly $1 million in revenue. And so you can sort of see the profit motive of the organizers to do stuff like this. There's $1 million in cash sitting on the table just to throw a conference like this. Now, like you're saying, maybe one thing this exposes is, what if you could use those same tools, those tools of fellowship, the tools of people sort of feeling like they had a voice, to have them engage in perhaps more noble pursuits? And you could say, whether you're an environmentalist, have them try to save the whales, or have them try to save the forest. Or if you're, you want to end childhood poverty, have them sort of donate money to communities where food banks are in order. And you do that, and you sort of, I don't know. Do you see what I'm saying? How to use the tools that are allowing QAnon to grow to allow things that are legitimate and helpful to the world to grow.
Yeah, and I think that these kinds of things that are going on, these conspiracy theories and QAnon and everything, that I'm saying that it's because of the internet, but maybe the internet has revealed the lack of ability to bring people together, like in a family, in a society, in a community, to where be engaged and be connected with the people around you and your neighbor, and just have a community. Their community is on the an internet. That's their community.
And I think
it's not with people. It's with it's with images on the internet.
It's fascinating though to me. Like, I don't know who. I mean, I think anyone could be involved in a cult or a conspiracy theory, but some of these people are the type of people who would trade recognition digitally for their relationships with their families. And it sort of leads me to believe that maybe their relationships with their families weren't all that strong to begin with. And so
that's my point.
That's kind of sad. Point. That's kind of sad as well. If, likes and follows are more of a boost than, spending time with your parents or your children or your spouse or, or your brothers and sisters, it's, I find it fascinating. It's a fascinating study in psychology. It's a fascinating study in how new technology, namely the internet, is causing groups like this to crop up, because I think that there's people like this everywhere. The internet gave them a tool to get together. And this conference would just go completely under the radar to you and me if people like Andrew Callaghan didn't go there and cover it. We wouldn't even have known that there was a Q conference.
Would you ever go to a conference like that, David?
No, I wouldn't. But
I wouldn't either.
But I'm thinking, like, if someone gave me free tickets, I would love to go just to see and try to have conversations with people. I think it would be fascinating. Just to sort of try to learn what's going on. I'll go just about anywhere post-COVID. I mean, I guess we're not post-COVID, but I'm fully vaccinated. We've talked about this on the show. I mean, we were the first people to get vaccinated, had no hesitancy about it, and I feel like it allows me more freedom. So I think prior to the pandemic, where there were things that I wouldn't have done, like go to a conference like this. I wouldn't pay for a conference like this, but if you gave me free tickets and you said, do you want to go check this out? I would say, like, I'd like to kind of see what it's about, because you're not going to see something like that in your everyday life. Now, not as a adherent to the conspiracy theory, but more as just a curious bystander, I would go to something like this, but I would never pay for it. I do think it's interesting to expose these sort of subcultures, these worlds, through journalism and allow these people to tell their own stories. Now, before we move on, I will say he was doing an interview and one of his fans came up and said, hey, there's these ladies down the street. I'm playing the tape now. And they believe that Prince was murdered because he was about to expose Hillary Clinton. And so they run and they do this sequence where they're running. I don't know if it's put together. And they find these ladies. And they're singing a Prince song. They're singing 7 by Prince. And these ladies are something else. Would you not agree?
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if they're affiliated with the conference or they're just adjacent to the conference, but they're too out there for the conference. But the lady says she gets her news from God. She doesn't look at the internet. She doesn't read newspapers. She doesn't listen to the radio. She doesn't read books. And I'm like, you don't say. But they have, we support the real president, Donald Trump banner. The lady, the African-American lady, she's holding a giant Q sign in the next scene. It's very funny. I don't really need to show it. She's holding a sign that says Q. And she says, we are not affiliated with Q. Let me see.
Oh, that was great. Yeah.
There it is. And they do the zoom in. Like, there's subtle editing in this, So I'll play the tape back. I won't play the audio, but she's doing the interview with this lady. She's talking about how she gets all of her news from God. And then this lady right here, while holding this giant sign that says Q, End Tyranny .online. She says, we are not affiliated with the QAnon movement. I'll actually unmute it and play it for the broadcast. You won't be able to hear it just because that's an extra step for me, but...
The Q movement, we
constantly at 99 to 100%.
We're not part of the Q movement. We align with some of the things.
She says, we're not part of the Q movement. That's her quote. While holding a giant sign that says Q. And it's fascinating. How could you summon that level of cognitive dissonance? But these people manage, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
he's just having her tell her story. And I guess in her mind, she's not part of the Q movement. She's just holding a giant sign that says Q.
In her mind, yep. And he lets her tell her story. He lets them do their singing. They had a song to sing.
Yep.
And they had a message, and they got their truth from God.
Mm-hmm.
I love that part. I go, oh my goodness.
Well, Prince was going to expose Hillary Clinton, so the Clintons murdered Prince, according to them. Not to me. Not according to me, according to them. And then this lady, this African-American lady, she's singing In the End by Linkin Park. And she says Chester Bennington, is that the guy's name? And Chris Cornell, two famous rock and roll singers, they were both murdered because they were going to expose the dark underbelly of this world. And I don't know if that's a conspiracy theory thing. I'm sure some conspiracy theory expert could tell us. Yeah, if someone dies unexpectedly before their time, use them as fodder in your conspiracy theory, because they're not there to disclaim any of your wild assertions.
It's true. It's true.
So I think we've covered most of the bases.
Yeah. On the video. The video was very interesting. I think to me, when I was watching All Gas No Brakes, I go, that's interesting. Yeah, I never knew that. I never heard that. And it's a new type of journalism.
Mm-hmm.
But then the more I thought about it, it says there's good parts and there's bad parts. The good part is you actually hear what these people are saying. Like we say, listen to them and try to understand what the other person is saying. That's what we always say here. And but on the other hand, it could be dangerous because there is no it is their context. It's not in a larger context.
Mm-hmm.
So here's what God says. Oh, that must be what God says.
Yeah.
Well, no, there's a much bigger body of knowledge that you need to kind of consider, not just that. But hey, that's what real life is about. Is don't get stuck in one place. Listen more than you talk, and try to understand what other people are saying.
So I guess there's two things we have to focus on because I was scrubbing through the video. I think you're right. But also, I think that Andrew Callaghan is coming from an outsider's perspective, so it's necessarily skeptical. I think if you were inundated in the movement, you would be getting stuff directly from these websites and these message boards, whereas you wouldn't really be an entrant into the movement because of Andrew Callaghan's journalism. But there's two things I want to discuss, and I want to save the last one for last, which is the section with the caterers, because I want you to share your take on it. Because
okay.
I asked you last night, and I thought that you had a really good take on it. But before we get into that, I think we need to talk about how the former National Security Advisor to the President of the United States was at the QAnon conference, how he took the oath, the QAnon oath, and posted it on the internet. And then when Andrew Callaghan asked him, he said, I don't know anything about QAnon, even though the person that he was on stage with was wearing a giant Q on the back of her leather vest, and he's taken the QAnon oath. So these politicians and these higher level people, they're being relatively cagey, right, with their association with the movement. And then, of course, he ends. He ends, and I'll play this. I'll actually play it with sound too. I want to know why.
Why what happened in Myanmar can't happen here. No reason. I mean, it should happen here. No reason.
So for those who don't know, the guy asked Michael Flynn, I want to know why what happened in Myanmar can't happen here. And if you don't know what happened in Myanmar, the military overthrew the democratically elected government. They deposed Aung San Suu Kyi from office, and they formed a de facto military dictatorship. And so the former national security advisor to the President of the United States at a QAnon conference said, there's no reason why what happened in Myanmar couldn't happen here. It should happen here. And now that's a pretty bold statement. If you're asking me for my opinion, I think that's a bold statement. How do you feel about that?
It's hard to believe that someone who sits in our government, who understands that it's for the people, it's for all the people, and it's we the people, and they want a military to overthrow a government and have a dictatorship. I can't wrap my head around that. I can't understand that.
Do you think the fact that General Flynn, the former national security advisor, had to receive a pardon from Donald Trump, and a pardon is not an exoneration, it's an admission of guilt and an alleviation of punishment? Do you think that he's so burned in terms of his reputation that saying things like that, despite being a former general, despite being the former national security advisor to the President of the United States, saying things like that is just part of his grift to make money?
It's very possible. Where he's at now, I think it's possible that someone could move to that direction. Yeah, it's possible. Because
he's lost his foreign business ties for failure to declare them. He lost his job. And, whatever he was going to do in retirement sort of got complicated by the fact that he became a criminal and he had to be pardoned by the president. So now this is what he does as his job. And I think it's sad because I think we often think of our military men from, private first class to 4-star general as having honor in this country. And he's a man that rose to the rank of general, and I'm not sure that that's true of him at this point.
Duty and honor, and none of those he demonstrated on that podium. But then sometimes the actual character of a person does not come out when you have safeguards within a society, safeguards within the military, and you are going to perform according to the honor and duty within the organization. But it doesn't necessarily match your character. Mm-hmm. And you take away those safeguards, you take away that discipline, you take away the duty and honor of the collegiality that you have within the military. You take that away, and then what is left bare is the character. And sometimes that character is not something that you would want that you would not be, I'm not proud of.
Yes. I think that's well said. It's just the military itself and its strictures sort of lead people to be honorable. That doesn't necessarily mean that everyone, if someone was a general and then they're not anymore and they can go out into the world and make business deals and sort of be agents for a foreign government and not declare it. And that doesn't mean that no one that ever served in the military would ever do that, because we saw that General Flynn chose to do that,
It's true.
Now, I think we need to wrap up with the caterers.
Okay.
So near the end of the video, before that final scene with General Flynn, and I think I'll play this without sound just because the sound, I want people to go watch the Channel 5 video if they're watching this, obviously. But the caterers at the end, it's interesting. They're getting all these perspectives from all these people, and then they do this montage of these people eating. Grabbing food, pouring gravy, on their chicken fried steaks and their mashed potatoes.
That looks good.
And he says, the caterers.
Okay. The caterers.
Now, these caterers. Actually, I will play the sound, okay?
Okay.
You won't hear it, but I'll play it.
We're actually feeding people.
What do you think he was trying to say?
That's classified.
She has a big butt. Who? His mom.
It's not that good. I mean, it's like shaped nicely, but it's not.
So, as you can see, these are boys, and they're acting like boys, and they're here feeding everyone at the QAnon conference, but they're a million miles away from being QAnon adherents. They just got hired to do a job, and they're there. And I said to you at the end of the video, what do you think the reason was for including the caterers? And they're these sophomoric, childish boys. And I said, I think it's to show that in America, there's all types of people. Even at the QAnon conference, there's these boys, and they're just behaving like boys. But then you had a very good point. Do you want to share your take on why the caterers, why you think Andrew Callaghan may have included the caterers near the end of this video?
Well, I at first I said, I don't know. I think it's a journalistic device within telling the story. But then when I thought about that, I go, yeah, what would be the purpose? Well, maybe they're sophomoric, ridiculous. Your mom has a big butt. What are you talking about? And they start going back and forth and getting a rise out of each other. That's pretty much the same thing that all these adults are doing at their level. It was the same thing.
Yeah, I think so.
When you're a teenager, you're a teenager, you're silly. And when you're an adult, you're ridiculous.
Yeah. And I think
what do we say? What are the words we used yesterday?
What you said yesterday was, I think he may have included the teenage boys because what they had to say was no more or less intelligent than what anyone else in the video had to say.
Yeah, that's how I say it. Yeah.
And I think that's an extraordinarily good point. And I think your point also that what they're doing among their own little clique, because there's just 4 of them, not a whole conference worth, is sort of what these adherents to this conspiracy theory do. They're saying the most outrageous thing they can to sort of get the biggest rise out of people that are in their social in-group. And so either he just put them in because they were goofing around and he got some funny footage, or he was trying to make a point similar to that when he included the caterers in his Q conference video.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both.
Yeah.
I think it's a little bit of both. Because they were just joking with each other. If he hadn't called us, if he hadn't said, that's what I remember. It says, your mom has a big butt. What are you talking about? If he hadn't said that, it says, oh yeah, your mom is a nice lady. It would have died right there.
Mm-hmm.
But because he said, oh, your mom is a big butt. What do you mean? Okay, now we have something going.
Yeah.
Now I have attention. Now we have dialogue here. Now you're paying attention to me. And I said, that's not that much different than the ridiculous things that they're saying in the whole video.
Mm-hmm.
How God speaks to me, or this.
Hillary Clinton eats children.
Yeah, yeah.
God speaks directly to me. Hillary Clinton eats children. Your mama has a big butt. The intelligence of all 3 of those statements are roughly the same.
Yeah.
So I think that was a good point. And I do think, I also think that, this is just my opinion, that Andrew Callaghan and his team may have included the caterers just as a bit of comic relief at the end.
That's probably what happened, yeah.
Sort of like with the pacing of the video, it's like you get a couple chuckles out of these kids being kids.
But I think of the journalism. I think of, well, how would that fit in a journalistic it kind of fit.
Mm-hmm.
It fit because they were there. They
Yeah.
were part of this. They were there, okay? And so how to fit? Well, compare it with the rest of it. It says, yeah, it's about the same.
Yeah.
Same level of intelligence, same level of comments. And yeah, it's about the same.
And the way that they achieve their goals is the same. Say the most outrageous thing to get a rise out of someone, and you've succeeded.
Yes.
Say something to end the conversation that's realistic, and you don't get any sort of feel-good reaction out of that. You don't get any reaction, and therefore it's not fun.
Yeah.
So the proof is in the pudding, and the pudding is the reaction that you can get out of someone. And that may be what's driving a lot of these people to believe what they believe and say what they say online.
Yeah. But the danger is that what they're saying is dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
Your mother has a big butt is not dangerous.
It could be dangerous if you say it to the wrong person in the wrong neighborhood.
To you. But storming the Capitol
Mm-hmm.
and having an overthrow of our government and all of a sudden have a military dictatorship that our former national security advisor says that should happen here. That's dangerous.
It is.
And people can and will get hurt, and people did get killed.
Mm-hmm.
People did die.
So
when you're a child, you can be ridiculous, but you need to grow up.
Mm-hmm.
You need to grow up. You have to listen to people, try to understand what they're saying, but actually be careful.
Yeah.
Because you have responsibility as an adult.
Yes. Well, I mean, I think that covers the video, and I think that's a good way to wrap it up. That I like to end with the boys being boys, but I think that you tying it back into, when you're adult, things have consequences. You can be a child when you're a child, but when you're adult, maybe you should grow up. And that's just your fatherly wisdom to end the program, don't you think?
Mm-hmm.
And it's not like groundbreaking. What you're saying is not revolutionary, but I think it's true. There's a lot of truth to it.
Almost every parent in the world would say that to their children.
Mm-hmm.
When you grow up, be careful. Think, what you say and what you do, the actions you take have consequences. And be good. Don't tear down. Don't hurt people. Do something positive. Be a person that's part of the solution, not part of the problem.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, every parent all over the world and every country would say the same thing to their children. And I think we need to start saying that to ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's a very good place to end it. Once again, I would like to say to anyone who's interested, today we've been covering Channel 5 with Andrew Callaghan. It's a YouTube channel, and their video entitled Q Conference. I respect and appreciate the work that Andrew Callaghan and his team put into their videos, and I would encourage you all to check them out. I'm going to go into our sign-off phase and say that this has been the Sons of Sequoia podcast. We're broadcasting live on YouTube Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 9 a.m., and we're available wherever you get your podcasts. Is there anything you'd like to say as I play the outro music?
Oh, Sons of Sequoia wants to tell you, be sure to keep on talking, but listen more than you talk, and try to understand what the other person is saying.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.